Hey everybody, you want me to start with a joke? Would that be good? Kind of in a good mood? Yeah, all right, right on, thanks. Let's see, there's a line of guys waiting to get their hair cut. And another guy walks by, is like, that's a real barbecue. Okay, so that's about where we're gonna be. Just wanna let you know. So I have a 5-year-old daughter, and me and my wife have been really trying to teach her how to tell jokes. And every now and then I'm like, hey, tell them that joke, right? And the joke goes something like this, like, what's a pirate's favorite food? And it's macaroni, right? And you know, we started working on this when she was like 4, right? And the joke was, you know, it would always be like, what's a pirate's favorite food? And then it'd be like, I forgot. And it's like, what is it, Dad? And then, you know, or sometimes she won't do the punchline. Well, she's almost got it, like the timing down and everything good. Picked her up from kindergarten the other day, and I was like, hey, how'd school go, whatever? She's like, great. I told one of my friends my joke on the playground. And I was like, oh, that's great. Did they like it? She's like, no, they didn't get it at all. And I was like, oh, well, their parents need to work harder, so there you go. Anyways, that's about where we are here with this. If you want this, so if you're kind of in a post-barbecue coma and you were like, that joke was bad, I'm going to go to the expo hall, don't blame you. You can email me right now. You'll get the slides right away, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I have an autoresponder set up for my work email account, and you should get that. If for some reason you don't, let me know, and we'll get that squared away. I work over at Signal Sciences. I help run DevOpsDays Austin. I have some courses on DevOps over at lynda.com, LinkedIn Learning, and I blog over at the Agile Admin. And I want to start, like, I'm actually going to get to the full part of my talk here in a minute, but I've been kind of thinking and had a little bit of a soul-searching moment in regards to how DevOps works and like what we're doing right now. And I wanted to give you like a little bit of thoughts here on my journey. So I came out of, are we getting a bad echo or is it just me? We good? Okay, I'm getting it, but okay, good. So out of my first job in school, I was kind of like, you know, working, but before I went to the big company, I was like doing tech work in the college that I was at the University of Oklahoma, and I was always kind of in the ops side of the house, right? And I can still remember, like, to this day, like, you know, having to go into a loaded classroom of people, and the professor's like, you know, cursing at the technology, then also making fun of you, the poor, you know, hourly wage tech, trying to figure out how to get their laptop to hook up to the thing, and you're like, oh man, what am I doing with my life? And then I just decided I'll just keep making that my career, and so that was a good thing. And I went to a big web and e-commerce company down in Austin, and started off with doing these like brutal on-call rotations. I would do these 24-hour deployment windows, 36 hours. It's like, you know, it's like Sunday, you're like, Japan's coming online, and we have nothing, you know, and people are flipping out, and it was just waterfall. And it was really, I was talking about it with a friend of mine who we're good friends, Ernest, and it was like, we all worked together, and it's like, yeah, that job was like, that was not fun. Like, why did we do that, you know? But it really, like, it prepared you for any future job and going forward. It's like, well, you can survive that. And also, a lot of friendships were born in that team. And I felt like kind of going through that trial and those kind of horrible experiences together, that really was helpful for us. In 2007, I left, went to a startup that was, you know, it was okay. I was able to use the cloud kind of early days. I learned a little bit about failure and about what I really wanted to be, how to be happy in a job. And really, I was kind of getting burned out of that experience. And back in 2010, some of my same friends at that company were launching another division in the R&D department, and we're running some SaaS-based cloud services in 2010. And so I jumped back to that right away, and it was great. And that was really fun for us because that was a moment when we kind of were given a blank slate as a team and said, hey, go build some SaaS products. We want to do it in the cloud. It's going to be great. We had also had we're really fortunate in Austin. We had Cloud Camp in Austin and Ops Camp in Austin, and you know, the founders of like Adam Jacob and other folks were there, Bacca Galup or John Willis, Damon Edwards, and so we got the DevOps message like pretty fresh, pretty early. And we started doing, treating our infrastructure as code. We were doing regular deploys, and we really, we weren't doing full CD at that point, but we were really pushing hard. And in the space of 2 years, we delivered 4 SaaS products, and the company had other problems with like trying to figure out how to sell it and trying to put it all together, but it was really fun. And the great part is like there was no brutal on call. Like we were all pretty happy there. At the same time, that a little bit later, we were really we had a lot of our customers that were sending us data. There was proprietary, and we're really worried about security. I found the rugged software movement. I met Gene Kim in a bar, in Austin. It's like, oh, this is a great city, right? Because we had just read his book like a year before that, and we're talking about it, and here he was. I started a tool called Gauntlet, which I'll talk about later. And then later I've joined Signal Sciences, and I kind of give you this as a path of like, I've seen security kind of grow up and think about how security is moving into the DevOps space. But even before I get into the security stuff, it's like, I really think, when we think about DevOps, in the early days of DevOps, we always would say, oh, DevOps is just a cultural movement, full stop. We always resisted definition, and then we kind of, further went on. And I still stick with like, hey, there is a piece of like, yeah, there's lean, and there's kind of the CAMS model, and there's a lot of other things going on. But DevOps being about friendship is not a horrible definition. And you think about how it all started, and we had a lot of compassion for operations people. We were saying, okay, well, for every 10 devs, there's 1 ops. That doesn't seem super fair, right? And the labor inequity sort of permeated all parts of the IT infrastructure and organization. Same thing with security. It's like 100 to 10 to 1 or 310 to 1, right? These are order of magnitude problems. So like security is not going to be seen as a winner in that instance. So even with all this, I kind of remained optimistic for DevOps and security. But then this year, I started kind of having some doubts. I was at RSA, which is a big security conference in San Francisco, and I saw the word DevOps on a bus by a vendor who's very not DevOps, and I'm like, geez, okay, that's weird. And then I was at DockerCon, and there was an advertisement that was like, the DevOps tool chain, and it was like, VMware, Windows, Docker, all in one, and I was like, that sounds like a nightmare. Like that doesn't sound like a tool chain. That sounds like I don't poke myself in the eyes for that, right? That's not any good. And I just started thinking, like, have we just sort of converted DevOps into this kind of marketing messaging? And if we just let it kind of be this new gimmick or slogan or thing that we're trying to do, and I sort of had some introspection of like, what does it become, and why do we have it? Like, are we maintaining the culture? Are we keeping it right? And I go back to thinking about the roots, like with John and Patrick here. It's like there was a lot of friendship kind of established in the early days, and I realize that there's irony in my story, because right now it's like I have some classes on DevOps, right? And it's like, oh, I'm pushing the DevOps message in Lynda and LinkedIn Learning. I also write a lot of DevOps and security stuff for Signal Sciences. But I think that I really want to go back to the roots, right? And I'm thinking like, what did we say early days? It's like, if we want to have DevOps succeed, it's got to be a cultural movement. I often think about culture, and so I know there's like real actual ways to think about culture, but I think about it as the moon. In my house, my 5-year-old daughter, she's really was into the moon for a while, and still is. But for a while, I was always about like where the moon's going to be, how big it's going to be, what's going on, and we started to develop a new culture, like a moon culture in our family. Like, it's like I started downloading an app to tell her like, oh yeah, the moon's going to be really big tonight, because it's I don't know, I can't remember all the terms like waning crescent, all that stuff, but we started developing, and I realized that it had clicked one day when I woke up and I was like, I checked the weather and I was like, ooh, it's going to be a full moon or something like that, or it's just going to be the little sliver. But I was excited to find out what the status was of the moon, and I was like, okay, my culture has been totally changed, right? So because we had a new understanding, a different language, new views kind of were shared, and that's what I thought. And this is the team that kind of went to go launch our all the cloud products, the SaaS products over at the National Instruments, a big company I was at. And we were just together this summer. We got together. Some of the guys are from Malaysia, and so they were in town. We went and watched a movie together. But it's a lot of that. A lot of stuff we do together is friendship, and I really was reminded of that last night when we were hanging out with the DevOps organizing team. It's like a lot of people had worked at Cerner, and a lot of people had experiences working together, and there's kind of some cohesion. And so I just encourage y'all, while you're here I mean, you know, I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Oklahoma, but I know kind of building that community and that connection is really important. And so really hoping that's something that you're able to get from this conference. So. All right, now I'll tell you why security is in crisis. So this is I'll kind of shift more into like the other stuff, because I think that's the important bits, but like, we can talk about security as well. I think security has realized two important things. They're protecting the wrong things, and they've been hurting productivity in the process. And security themselves is saying this. Is a recent book by Steve Beloven. And this is about the funniest the actual slides are going to be too. So just some warning on that. Here's another quote that I find is interesting. Security by risk assessment introduces a dangerous fallacy that structured inadequacy is almost as good as adequacy, and that underfunded security efforts plus risk management are about as good as properly funded security work. Let that sit in. Does that bother you? Raise your hand if that bothers you. Right? Okay, yeah. So the problem, what they're saying here is that we're fine with just saying like let's do actuarial things to have better software, right? Like that is not good, right? It's fine, sure, you got to buy insurance policies or whatever but like risk assessment and managing risk is different than good engineering, and that was part of it. Often security is a cultural outlier. Many security teams work with a worldview where their goal is to inhibit change as much as possible. Do you have a friend that would resonate with that, right? Right, that's a common experience. I hear that in conversation all the time. I've had people tell me before, oh, you security guys, you just prefer that we would just have a system unplugged and not hooked up to the network. And then I hear security people saying like, those stupid developers. And security, you know, recognizes this, and I just got a recent mailer from a security company. I have a couple security certifications from the olden days, and one of them was like, oh yeah, it's 30 times cheaper to fix in dev versus prod or whatever. But like it's from 2002, but like the mailing I got was like 6 months ago, right? So like security is kind of in a little bit of a crisis mode here too, and I won't name who that was, but. Security has to change or die. I thought this was quite telling. So Signal Sciences, we provide like a web app firewall type product. So early on when I first was joining, I was like, oh, well, what do people do in this space? And I hadn't looked at web app firewalls for, 5 or 6 years, and I thought surely things got to be better by now, right? But this is from a recent paper, maybe like 2 years ago. This is every aspect of managing WAFS is an ongoing process. This is the antithesis of set it and forget it technology. That's the real point of this research. To maximize value, you're going to need everyone's eyes open to the full effort required. And they go on to like say you need like 2 to 3 full-time engineers, to support this kind of frankly dubious technology. And you're like, what? Like, what world is that? We don't even have enough security people to fill like the basic jobs now. Like, we don't have enough to staff this kind of thing. Rich Mogul, a very popular security researcher, he says a large percentage of the companies on the expo floor here at RSA, they're not going to be here in 5 years. Security takes a bottleneck approach. So this is a recent article in Fortune magazine. Average time to deliver has gone up over the last from 8.5 months to over 10 months in the last 5 years. And they cite one of the main reasons is all the security functions that are having to go along with all the new software that's coming out. And people are finding a hard time where they can adapt. Like it's like we're taking all these waterfall approaches and now we're having to put it into something else. Along the way in 2010, but I think it's really starting to become ripe for discussion now, the rugged software movement started, and really just a couple of security people that said, the new world looks different, so we need to act different, and we need to do things different. And so instead of being just security-minded, like we're actually going to think about rugged. So we're going to think in the ideas of quality, positive benefits for people, things that are known, that can be affirming values. And I think that like we're finding this is true. Like the State of DevOps report is reporting that, hey, you're going to be way more productive triaging security if you're doing DevOps practices when conjoined with that. High-performing organizations achieve quality by incorporating security and security teams in the delivery process. Zane Lackey, who I now work with, but he used to work over at Etsy, he gave a really great talk on this, and if you're interested, I'd be excited for y'all to check that out. So this is where we're going to call our framework for like the old way and the new way that security needs to interact. So the first way is, people used to say, let's embrace secrecy. Security folks wouldn't really share all their data. It'd be siloed. You have SIMs and other things like that. Now the new way is create feedback loops. So this is the idea of a security team needs to choose to embrace openness and spread about why it's doing what it's doing. And I think you can do that most importantly and most effectively in runtime. And I decided to take that first list that I showed you. We're going to go through it bullet by bullet, but I try to take it into actions of like new ways of thinking and not just like, oh, okay, you got to go like, add a monitoring stack to this. So we'll see how that flies here. We gotta start detecting what matters. So like instead of just detecting like cross-site scripting or SQL injection or something like that, detect like whenever people's user accounts are being taken over, portions of your site or your application or your stack that are under attack, anything to do with like business logic flaws. This is my sweet runtime graphic. So this ends up being what a lot of folks in security end up doing. But we need to be able to answer basic questions about like, are we under attack right now? Where is it coming from? And ultimately, like, where are they having success? Options for stuff like this are RASPs or WAFS or anything in your runtime. And I just kind of focused on application security side, but you can look at other focus areas for that as well. Old path, a lot of security folks existed and even still exist to this day just so that the company can pass audit and hit some sort of compliance. I think that we need to change that in our minds. We need to think of security as a place and compliance where you can actually add value. So it's important to understand, like, auditors, they're not there to like make your day worse. It's like they want to put policies and procedures in place and then make sure that everything that you're doing as a business, like lines up with that. And then whenever you can do both of those things, they're like, yeah, sweet, you get to keep operating for one more year. We'll see you back then. And honestly, like a lot of the stuff in PCI and other things like that, it's not horrible. It's just like a lot of it was written and built in kind of a waterfall era. So if you can like strip out all the waterfall bits, like you're actually not in too bad of a space. There's a great book that's coming out from O'Reilly, or it's in beta right now, but it's this book that I've referenced a couple times already. Agile application security, but one of the quotes in it I really liked is like, you can start treating, and I found this to be true and I've done PCI as well, it's like you can treat deploys and changes just as standard or routine that have already been pre-approved as long as they're going through kind of a regular process. So you can kind of circumvent this. And I had a chance to sit down next to an auditor one time, and she's like, oh yeah, like we used to audit really small companies, and guess what, like the same person who wrote the code is the same person deploying the code, and that was like 10 years ago, and like no big deal. Like auditors know how to deal with that. You just got to have the right controls in place. And a lot of times we interpret these like large docs and say, oh, like separation of duties, like we got to two keys to turn for the nukes and stuff, which is kind of real now where we are and politically. But when I put the slide together, I was like, oh, nukes, remember the 80s? That's, now it's like, oh, remember last week? Anyway, so separation of duties, like we often think that, but like we don't have to think in that situation. Here's some posts that might be helpful for you if you find yourself kind of dealing with that scenario. There's also a DevOps audit defense toolkit that is very helpful to kind of get around auditors and to help bring them into the process. And it's like, here's how we're setting up our pipeline, and auditors love it. Like whenever I kind of went through the PCI process recently, there was some disagreement about agile versus waterfall approaches. But once we sort of set it all up and said, yeah, here's the policy and procedures in place, like it worked out just great. Okay, so we used to have an idea that security would just enforce stability, but now we are thinking about creating chaos. Chaos engineering is a new scope of study that people are doing in the security space. There's some, it was very much popularized by Netflix with the Chaos Monkey, but I see books like Anti-Fragile or the Release It, Nygaard's book is really helpful. A friend of mine, Aaron Reinhardt, is releasing Chaos SLINGR. Chaos SLINGR adds misconfig to your stack, and it's a new open source tool, but it runs as a Lambda and it's serverless, and it's pretty cool, so go check that out if you can. I think you can put this in another place too, but I'll put bug bounties here. I think the idea of always pen testing your application, I mean, it's already getting pen tested anyways, so why not have people do it and win a little bit of money and really understand what's going on under the what's going on the internet out there. All right, so okay, old path, new path. Old path, build a wall. New path, zero trust networks. So we know that now the new OSI model is software all the way down, and so we have to have like not this. We don't need to have this like idea that we used to have 10, 15 years ago of kind of the armadillo or the M&M or whatever, where it's like hard outside, squishy inside or whatever. But we can't think in those terms anymore, right? We have to assume compromise. We have to instrument as many layers as possible, from like the laptops to web apps to even like the accounts your customers are using, and kind of sift through that data, and not treat a kind of an outer firewall as kind of an answer. Okay, old path, slow validation. New path, fast and non-blocking. So don't slow delivery. Do continuous testing and validation. You can do it on the side of the pipeline. You can do it in parallel of your delivery. Some of the stuff, security tests sometimes take a really long time to run, so you don't always want to put it in like a blocking mode, but just run them off to the side and alert back to the main channel if it does break. At Signal Sciences, we do about 15 deploys per day. We've done about 10,000 in the last 2.5, 3 years. I got nominated to build the deployment system, and I was like, okay, where's that Jez Humble book? Okay, yeah, and so I read that, and I was like, okay, I think we can do this, and basically it's just a push button deploy, and we really tried to optimize from the time of code commit to running system, and I think ours is down to like 4 minutes to 5 minutes now, with a lot of that being the testing piece, and then the actual deployment is like 30 seconds for production, 15 seconds for kind of our staging tiers. But we tried to, every time we look at it, I was like, okay, how long does it take for someone to commit some code and to have it like running in our full production stack? And then we gave power for everybody to deploy, and that was a really good feeling. But we're a security company. Ultimately, we're not just a software company. We're a security company, so we have security as part of the overall story. And so we look, and I have another deck that's more focused on this, but like we looked at these stages of the pipeline. So, okay, what parts of things am I bundling in that's going to leave me vulnerable? Do any of my acceptance or security tests catch any issues before release? And then that last part, which I think is also important, is like, where am I being attacked right now? Okay, so certainty testing. I think how am I doing on time? I can keep going. I got more jokes too, so it's good. You guys are in luck. You're in luck. Okay. Certainty testing versus adversity testing. New way is adversity testing. So the idea of be mean to your code. The goal should be to come up with a set of automated tests that probe and check your system security configurations and any runtime system behavior for security features that execute every time the system is built and every time it is deployed. And so security tools are hard to use, and they're not always a lot of fun. But I think that we needed, whenever I was working on this, we needed a method for collaboration for devs and operations and security engineers, and so I felt like we needed a new language. Oh, good, 5. Okay, sweet. 5 people laughed at my joke. That's what you're trying to tell me, I think. I got it. I got that. It's good. It was 5 more than last time. All right, cool. So there needed to be a new language, and so I started this project called Gauntlet. And Gauntlet is it's an open source tool, but it tries to be a part of your CI/CD pipeline. You can find out more about it on gauntlet.org. But with this really sweet animated graphic, I will show you what it does. You put code in. Oh, did you catch that? That was cool. That's the last animation screen, so hope you really like that. Hope we can see it again. Okay, cool. But security tests are run, but they're run use these attack files to bootstrap them. And so it's easy to install. You just say gem install Gauntlet, or we also have a Docker container. I think I'll show that in a minute. But in plain English, you're able to say, look for cross-site scripting against this URL. I'm able to set up a couple parameters, and then later say, like, hey, 0 issues should be detected on this. And this is a way that, like, you don't have to be a security person to know, like, this should always turn green. Like, that's fine, right? Operations, security, developers can all look at this and reason about it together, and it's a fun thing. Aaron from United Healthcare, he said that, he's being probably overstated there, but we've saved millions of dollars using Gauntlet for the largest healthcare industry project. So I'm not exactly sure what that was, but people who get to it and really get their teams like working with it, it's a really helpful tool for them. I have a workshop that I did on this that might be helpful for you, and there's a bit.ly there. If you get the slides, you can follow along with it. But there's labs on how to use it, how to set it up, put it inside of a build pipeline. And we also have a demo environment that will set up vulnerable apps, and you can do some testing against it. All right, so, oh yeah, and that's right. You can't just leave it at that, right? You got to bring it all the way back around, and so we actually have it set up so it's doing continuous builds and running tests. So most people use it in Docker, and that's a pretty cool thing. All right, the last couple things I want to talk about is, whoops, skip too quick. So there's a lot of talk about shifting left, but security inherently was always kind of building into this model of test when done. So like test right before you deliver, right, or right after you deliver, and then come in once a year and then do another assessment and figure that out. And I'm really a big fan of Shannon's Leitz's stuff. She talks about the secure software supply chain and how to add feedback loops at all the different steps. And if you're in security, like I would recommend just taking a look at this and seeing like what are the questions I need to be asking at these different stages of the pipeline, and how can I put instrumentation that's not gates, but are ways that like enable people to go faster, move faster, do so securely. And I really like one of Shannon's big things is like, hey, every Monday, like we all come into the office and we don't work. We just like hack on something, right? We red team something. And sometimes they know that we're going to, and sometimes they get, an email saying like, hey, your app's got like a bunch of problems in it. And then, but a really interesting thing has started happening culturally in their organization. Like people are saying, oh, can you red team our thing? Can you test our thing? And they're like, yeah, sure. So they start adding to the queue. And now there's more and more testing happening. So instead of just this like end of cycle, once a year kind of audit thing, it's an unexpected thing, but it's whatever people get in their mind, or something like like the struts thing comes out. It's like, ooh, somebody on our team can say, I want to go and like try to test that against some of our stuff and see how far we can get internally on that. It's important to think, in containers. Let's see. There's a great presentation by Gareth Rushgrove around this as well, around like all the stuff that we inherit and that we put in there. And so shifting the assessment of what's actually running in production to early in your pipeline, that's a really, really great thing. We see that a lot of Docker images have high security vulnerabilities in them, and you want to make sure to keep, like that's just one example. You can do the same thing for JavaScript, for all your different languages, and start understanding like where do all my vulnerabilities lie and things that I'm inheriting. The last thing that I'll mention is instead of being process-driven, like think of security as like a paved road. And I ripped this off from Jason Chan, who does Netflix, who's a security lead over at Netflix. But you want to make it easy for people to do the right thing. So you have gold images, blessed builds, blessed dependencies, but people are able to see the right path. And if they're following the paved road, like they're going to get security for free. They're going to get security, running alongside with them. And only if they're going off the boundaries do they get that. So now security, instead of being a blocker, security is an enabler of the business. So, okay, if you would like the slides, email me, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.